Keep Walters in mind if you're looking for a place to book a private event in D.C. Visit waltersdc.com/private events for more information.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Managa delivers. Swing and a long drive left field. Happ going back, way back at the warning track, looking up, and it is gone. Goodbye. Bang, zoom goes Joey Wiemer. He has done it again. A 2-out, 3-run home run in the top of the first inning. The ball thrown back on the field from the bleachers as Wiemer crosses the plate, greeted by Brady House, greeted by Dalen Lyle, greeted by C.J. Abrams. It's the Nationals 3 and the Cubs nothing.
Here's the pitch. Swing a line drive, right center field. It's falling. It's down for a hit. It's up the gap. Crow Armstrong can't cut it off. It goes all the way to the ivy. Wiemer's racing for second. He's trying for third. The throw from Horner is not going to be in time. It's a head-first dive and a triple for Joey Wiemer. Wiemer flashes thumbs up to the dugout. Joey Wiemer is 5 for 5 as a National. He has his first triple to go along with his 2 home runs over the first 2 games he's played.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at Wrigley Field, where the Nats have started their 2026 regular season by winning 2 out of 3 games at the Chicago Cubs. Thursday, a 10-4 win at the Cubs. Saturday afternoon, a 10-2 loss at the Cubs. But Sunday afternoon, a 6-3 win at the Cubs. Not bad for a team that has restarted a rebuild in a 3-game series at a now win-now team in the Cubs. Good for the Nats for doing as they did in this series. And good to have you with us on Nats Chat. If you happen to be listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can write a review of the podcast saying that you like it. The review can be just a sentence or 2, but the reviews help out the podcast a lot. Thank you for doing them. Washington Nationals history includes multiple notable Joeys. One of the great relievers from the early years of the Nats was Joey Eishen, right? Few Nats players have had as good of a 2-month run as Joey Meneses had over August and September 2022. Well, now we have Joey Wiemer. He played in just 2 of the 3 games in this series at the Cubs, but he got on base in every plate appearance that he had. In fact, he has gotten on base in each of his first 8 regular season plate appearances with the Nats, a new Montreal Expos / Washington Nationals franchise record. Joey Wiemer joining the likes of Joey Eishen and Joey Meneses. We won't mention Joey Gallo, but Mark, Joey Wiemer, what a performance by him over his 2 games in Chicago.
I mean, if I had told you, Al, take your pick out of anybody on the Nationals roster who would reach base 8 times in this series, how many names would you have had to go down the list before you got to Joey Wiemer?
Many.
Yeah. So it is a remarkable and unexpected thing that he did. Now, very advantageous matchups. 7 of the 8 plate appearances came against lefties. So that was by design. You know, that's the reason he didn't start game 2 of the series. It's the reason why we probably won't see him back in the lineup until the final game of the Phillies series when they face Christopher Sanchez. It's going to be right-handers the next 2 days. So when you see that lineup come out on Monday and you say, how can he not play Joey Wiemer? He's reached base in all 8 plate appearances. Well, because this is a matchup-based decision, and it's all about putting guys in the best position where they can have success. So they believe his success will come against lefties. But what he's shown us in these at-bats is the combination of everything. Power, yes, the ability to hit 2 home runs. And the home run he hit in this game, it was on a pitch like well down below the knees, and he golfed it out there to left field. The ability to run the bases, the triple that he hit to right center, that wasn't an automatic triple. He had to turn on the jets to get there and show that he does have those kind of wheels to do that. And then also the patience at the plate to draw a couple of walks. So he showed you that he can do it in a lot of different ways. Now, is this who he's going to be? Is he going to be a NL MVP frontrunner, like I jokingly said on Twitter about it? No, of course. Well, I believe he won't be. Highly unlikely that'll be the case. And again, they're going to use him in particular spots where they think the matchups make sense. But what he did provide for them in this series is an indication both of what he can do, but also how this new coaching staff, the new front office, is going to try to deploy everybody they have on their roster and put people in the best spots to contribute and make a difference. And it doesn't just have to be the same 3 or 4 guys. It can be almost anybody if you put them in the right spots.
Who is the greatest Joey in Nats history, in your opinion? Can we say Joey Eishen? He certainly was the most entertaining Joey.
Yeah, Joey Eishen had some quotes that could not be published in newspapers back in the day. I think what Joey Meneses did, and I know it didn't end, it didn't sustain itself, but those first 2 months, especially coming off of the Juan Soto trade, and as demoralizing as that was, for Meneses to come in and just implant himself those first couple months as just a phenomenon, that was a lot of fun at a time and during a season that was just not fun at all for the Nationals. So I'm going to put Joey Meneses at the top of my list for best Joeys in Nats history. I'm trying to think of any others that we might be forgetting in the years in between. And nothing's coming to mind in terms of big name, somebody who really did a lot for them that was a Joey. I'm not feeling it. I'm not thinking of anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, Jose is Spanish for Joe, which you could say means Joey, but I think we're getting a little loose with the definition if we do that. Bottom line, Joey Wiemer has a chance to be the greatest Joey of them all. We'll see how the rest of his season goes. But man, he was so good in this series. And, you in talking about how the Nats deployed Wiemer in this series, this was something that we discussed going into the regular season, that the Nats with their new process, if it is legit, we're going to see signs of its legitimacy early. Like, this is not something that's going to take time. Like, we're going to see the process working in a variety of ways over the course of the 162-game regular season, and we already are seeing signs of that with what happened with a guy like Joey Wiemer and him strategically being used against left-handed pitching in this series. The Nats offense in this series ended up being good in 2 out of the 3 games. Was good in game 1, not good in game 2, but was back to being good in this game 3. CJ Abrams, by the way, was back off not being with the team on Saturday due to a death in his family. But Abrams is the Nats starting shortstop and number 6 batter, 0 for 3 with a hit by pitch and 2 strikeouts. It's a funny deal. The Nats win 2 out of 3 games at the Cubs, despite Abrams not doing a ton in this series, despite James Wood not really doing all that much in this series. But the Nats on Sunday afternoon, 6 runs, 11 hits, which were 2 home runs, a triple, 2 doubles, and 6 singles, 3 walks, and a hit by pitch. And the run total of 6 could have been even higher, as the Nats went just 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. And yeah, Joey Wiemer again was a monster. He was the Nats starting right fielder and number 5 batter, as was the case on Thursday. Wiemer on Thursday, 3 for 3, solo homer, 2 singles, and a walk. Also got credited with an outfield assist. Wiemer on Sunday afternoon, 3 for 3, 3-run homer, a triple, a single, and a walk. He and the Nats 3-run first had a 2-out, 3-run homer to left field for a 3-0 Nats lead. He in the top of the 4th had a leadoff first pitch opposite field triple to the right center field gap. He and the Nats 1-run 6th drew an 8-pitch walk. And then Wiemer got on base again. He and the Nats 2-run 8th had a leadoff single through the left side of the infield, despite having been down in the count at 1.02. His confidence must be sky high right now. He must be feeling it in a way that he maybe has never felt it before. And I felt like that single in the 8th sort of captured that, where he's down 0-2, and it's like it doesn't matter. He finds a way to get a hit and to be on base again.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned confidence, because he was admitting to us after the game, and this is a man of very few words. He is not a quote machine in any way, but he was admitting that, the circuitous path that he took to get here, he's played for several teams. He's moved around a lot just in the last 12 months. He admitted there were times not that long ago that he was pretty down and not sure where this was all going to go for him in his career. So just to get this opportunity with the Nationals, and this isn't somebody that, at least on the outside, we all looked at and said, oh, he's a lock to make this team coming out of spring training. And in some ways, he kind of made it because Dylan Cruz didn't. As the right-handed hitting outfielder, corner outfielder, sometimes plays center field. So he took advantage of that situation. So just getting the opportunity was a big deal for him. And then now to perform in those spots, I can only imagine how good he's feeling inside. But again, I want to be clear about this. Like, this does not mean that he is all of a sudden a huge part of their lineup. This was a specific thing with the matchups in this series. I think we'll see him again, obviously, if there's a late spot to bring him off the bench, if the Phillies bring in a left-handed reliever, maybe he comes in to pinch hit, obviously starting again against Christopher Sanchez. But we're already seeing that this front office is not going to be attached to anybody, and they're going to try to put the best 26-man roster they can out there on any given day for any given series. And here's the evidence of that. After this game, they optioned Andres Chaparro to AAA. Now, that's the roster move to clear a spot for Curtis Mead, who they just picked up the other day. And Mead is a right-handed hitting corner infielder, so that kind of takes Chaparro's spot. Chaparro didn't play poorly in this series. He made a great play at first base in this game. He had a big hit on opening day. I don't think that's a reflection of how he did in this series. I think it's a reflection of the Nationals saying there was good matchups for him with two lefties. We've got a guy now in Mead that we think can maybe fill more needs for us, maybe be a better defensive player, also be that right-handed bat. We'll probably see Chaparro again at some point. It's going to be this constantly evolving thing. And so I'm not suggesting that Joey Wiemer is going to be sent down anytime soon. But just because what we saw from him this weekend and how he was used does not guarantee that he's going to be used the same way moving forward. And I think this is an adjustment we're all going to have to make with how this new regime is going to operate.
And I think it's a welcome adjustment. I think this is smart. I think this team is operating at a level that we have not seen previously. The Chaparro thing is so funny. He was the Nats' number 2 batter in games 1 and 3 of this series, and he ends up being demoted at the conclusion of the series. Think about that. How often does something like that happen? But, here's the other thing, too. So we talk about, the improved process, right? If the Nats are going to have success this season, it's going to have to be in process, smoke and mirrors type fashion. The Nats are going to have to figure out ways to win and go above and beyond what you're used to seeing. They're not going to outmash teams. They're probably not going to outpitch teams. They're probably not going to outdefend teams. It's going to have to be with a lot of this process type stuff and, really thinking about matchups and really being strategic and, hope a few breaks go your way. And that's kind of what happened in this series. Nobody is looking at the Nats and saying they are anywhere near the Cubs in terms of talent. And yet the Nats just took 2 out of 3 games at the Cubs, and this is what better process can do. Now, it's one series. We understand that. But I really feel like this is encouraging. We were talking prior to the start of the taping of this show. This is the Nats' first series win in a regular season opening series since 2018. That is remarkable when you think about that.
It's, 8 years. That was Davey Martinez's first series as a manager. They swept the Reds in Cincinnati, and you thought, boy, here they go. Here's this great talented team that's just going to take off under their new manager. Well, didn't actually work out in the end for them. They only won 82 games, and they missed the playoffs. All the great teams they had, all the talent on some of those other rosters, before the teardown began, none of them, not in 2019, 2020, 2021, none of them won their opening series. This is the first one to do it. And the fact that they would do it against a team that was one of the best in the National League last year, that went out and made some big moves this winter, that is all in on 2026, the way the Cubs are, is very impressive. And on top of that, you kind of alluded to this, but they didn't exactly play a super clean series. Defense was shaky. Base running was shaky. They only went 2 for 10, I think, with runners in scoring position in this game. They won kind of in spite of all that. And I think it speaks to something else that kind of hints at what you've been getting at here too. They're really not focused on the star players. Yes, they would love for James Wood and CJ Abrams and the best players to step up and be the leaders and carry this team. But they are also very much focused on, as they describe it, raising the floor of the roster so that players 26, 25, 24, 23 on the roster are still guys they can count on if you put them into the right spots. And I think one of the biggest issues this team has had over the last several years, and I think we've discussed this before, is the lack of depth. And guys who were on their big league roster who probably didn't deserve to be in the big leagues and very often were wasted away on the bench and not used very much because they weren't that good or they weren't trusted to play in situations of any consequence. This group, I think, really believes in the idea of all 26 making a difference. And so, yeah, you want your star players at the top to do things, but it's also about those, final 5 players on your roster and the guys who are at AAA who will be called up at some point to replace them. It's all about them contributing, and those little things, those little margins can be the difference between winning games.
Paul Toboni, Ani Kalambi, Blake Butera, so far, so good. Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation's end of March special, but before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
2-1. Line drive right field. That'll get down for a base hit. Glasser gets the waiver at third, heading for the plate. Here's Oleman's throw in. Mack the tag. He's safe. Glasser slides just under the tag of Mack to score the first run of the game for Rochester.
Window Nation is ready for warm weather, and there's no better time to upgrade your home with great Window Nation windows than right now. The end of March special from Window Nation for Nats Chat listeners. The more you buy, the more savings you can enjoy. Up to 50% off all window styles, plus pay no interest for 5 full years. Again, up to 50% off all window styles, plus pay no interest for 5 full years. Visit windownation.com to schedule a free consultation. That's windownation.com, and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
2 balls, 1 strike to pitch. Swinging a high fly ball. Left center field deep. Happ going back, way back at the wall, and it is gone. Goodbye. A 2-run home run for Keibert Ruiz for the right side of the plate. Bang, zoom goes Keibert Ruiz. A big 2-out clutch 2-run home run. And now the Nationals have a 4-run cushion here in the 8th inning. It's now Washington 6 and Chicago 2.
Also homering for the Nats in this 6-3 win at the Cubs on Sunday afternoon, Keibert Ruiz, who homered in a regular season game for the first time since the Nats' second game of last regular season. As you may recall, Ruiz got off to a nice start last regular season. We were talking about that a year ago at this time. And then, of course, the rest of his season ended up happening. But Keibert Ruiz in this game on Sunday afternoon, coming through 1 for 3 with a 2-run homer and an RBI sac fly. Ruiz in the Nats' 2-run 8th, a 2-out 2-run homer to left for a 6-2 Nats lead. Wiemer did what he did. Nobody else really had like a big offensive game, but good for Keibert Ruiz for homering.
Yeah, I think that one meant something for him. As you said, it had been almost a calendar year since he had done it. Remember how optimistic we were about that when he did homered on the first 2 games? Like, boy, this could be the start of something. Boy, did he need that after his struggles the year before. And we all know how that turned out, because it was a miserable season for him in a lot of ways, not just performance, but of course the concussion that sidelined him for so long. This meant something to him. We talked about this yesterday, that Blake Butera said that Ruiz and Drew Millis are going to split the job essentially 50-50 to start the season. And yes, that's in part to protect Ruiz from, getting worn down, but it's also a sign that, like, who cares what your contract is? You haven't necessarily proven yourself to be the number 1 catcher here. We know Harry Ford is on the way at some point as well, and they want to give Millis a chance to show what he can do. So if you're Ruiz, you should be feeling a little pressure right now to perform when you get the opportunity. So doing things like that to homer in a big spot where, as I said, they were not driving in runners when they had a chance. And he was one of the culprits earlier in the game. He came up with the runners in scoring position and popped up to get out of 1 inning. So he comes up in this spot, bases loaded. Nunez had just struck out. You're like, are they going to find a way not to get this run home again? And he hits a sacrifice fly to get that runner in. And then, of course, the 2-run homer later on. All 6 runs in this game driven in by Ruiz and Wiemer on 3 total swings. That's what it took. And I know that had to feel good for Keibert Ruiz.
And speaking of feeling good for someone, Jake Irvin, he was the Nats starting pitcher for the 6-3 win at the Cubs on Sunday afternoon. We all know about how bad Jake Irvin's 2025 season was. Well, here he was making his 2026 regular season debut. Again, the Nats are playing what is expected to be a very good team in the Cubs, certainly a win-now team. And Irvin in this game, very effective. 2 runs, 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk. Gave up just 3 hits. Now, 2 of them were homers. He gave up 2 homers and a single. He threw 93 pitches, 58 strikes, 35 balls. Both of the runs that Irvin allowed came in the bottom of the 4th, which he began by giving up back-to-back solo homers by Alex Bregman and Ian Happ. But you've been talking about this, how the focus for Irvin now is more on quality as opposed to quantity. A focus also now is on trying to get back to the strikeout. Well, 7 strikeouts versus 1 walk, that will play. The quantity wasn't necessarily there, just 5 innings. But you know what? So what? 2 runs in 5 innings off the season that this guy just had. Excellent to see Jake Irvin have this kind of outing on Sunday.
I think this was a perfect example of what he was talking about all spring and what he can be. Yes, you'd love to go more than 5 innings, but if you're only going to go 5, make it the best 5 you can. His first time through the order did not give up a hit, did not give up a walk. As you said, he's striking guys out. The velocity was good. A little bit inefficient that he was having trouble putting away hitters and drove the pitch count up somewhat, but it was effective. And that's what he wants. Now, he gives up the 2 solo homers. We know that was his biggest problem last year, gave up the most homers in the league. But solo homers, usually not going to kill you. He didn't put anybody on base, free passes, and got himself, through the 4th without any trouble. I thought he might not last all the way through the 5th because his pitch count was getting up there, but Butera let him finish it out. He did finish it out strong. Good for him. And 5 innings, 2 runs, even though it was 93 pitches, they will take that. No questions asked at all about it. Over time, sure, you'd love him to get into the 6th more regularly, but for what he's supposed to be, you'll take 5 quality innings out of Jake Irvin and then hand it over to the bullpen.
Again, especially off last season. I mean, we, a few months ago, were talking about the Nats potentially non-tendering this guy. It's crazy how things work out. He ends up being the number 3 man in the rotation. Now, we understand he's not really truly their number 3 starting pitcher, but think about where we were a few months ago going into the non-tender deadline day. We were saying, hey, maybe the Nats will non-tender Jake Irvin, and instead here he is, the number 3 man in the rotation, but pitching well in this game at the Cubs. Irvin last regular season, 33 starts, ERA of 5.70, the worst ERA among all qualified pitchers in the majors. Gave up the MLB worst 38 homers, gave up an MLB worst 114 earned runs. I mean, again, nightmare of a season. So good to see him pitch well in this game on Sunday afternoon. And then how about the Nats bullpen in this 6-3 win at the Cubs? 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 4 innings. And we talk about the Nats' new and improved process. So P.J. Poulin, bottom of the 6th, faced 3 batters, got 2 outs. Gus Varland tossed 1 1/3 perfect innings. And then Blake Butera deployed, who we are presuming is the Nats' ace reliever, although maybe we should not be presuming anything. But Cionel Perez did close out the opening day win. Butera goes to Perez in the 8th inning in this game. Perez does allow a run. 1 run in 1 inning. Bottom of the 8th, gave up a 1-out opposite field solo homer by Alex Bregman to right to cut the Nats' lead to 6-3. But this absolutely stood out because, again, Perez closed out the win on Thursday. Perez in that game, as you may remember, faced the heart of the Cubs lineup. Tossed a perfect bottom of the 9th, 2 swinging strikeouts in facing the Cubs numbers 2 through 4 batters. Well, in this game, the Cubs numbers 1 through 3 batters were coming up. Butera went to Perez for that 8th inning. Results not perfect, but only gave up the run. And then Clayton Beeter, who did not look good on opening day, was summoned to close out the game. And Beeter, to his credit, a perfect bottom of the 9th inning for the save. Really interesting bullpen usage by Blake Butera here.
I think the key to it all is that Perez was used in, yes, it was the 8th inning, but it was the top of the Cubs lineup, a little more left-handed heavy. That, again, matchup based. And then Beeter was facing the, 5, 6, 7 hitters, more right-handed there in the bottom of the 9th to finish it out. So, is one of them the ace reliever? Is one of them the closer? I don't think they're necessarily looking at it that way. I think it's, here's our pool of candidates that we like in high leverage spots, and we're going to pick them based on the matchups regardless of what the inning is. Now, Davey Martinez did this at times as well. Remember, he would use Kyle Finnegan sometimes earlier on, if he knew that it was the best hitters in the opposing lineup, he would often bring him in, and then maybe it would be Hunter Harvey, who we saw pitch in this game for the Cubs, or somebody else maybe finishing it out in the ninth. Finnegan was ultimately their closer, and they kind of stuck with that. That may not be the case here this year with this group, but I think a lot of it is matchup based, and it's kind of like you've got 3, 4, whatever the number is of the relievers that you trust late in the game in high leverage spots, and he's going to deploy them against certain parts of the lineup, I think, that make the most sense to him.
Is there anything in MLB rules that prevent or discourage Blake Butera during games getting communicated to by a Paul Taboni and Ani Kalambi, a member of Nats baseball ops? Like, in game, is it possible that Butera is being fed information or suggestions, or is this only pre- and post-game stuff that you think is happening?
I'm not sure if there's anything specifically in place. I mean, you can't have any electronics in the dugout, but I suppose somebody could be in the clubhouse and relay a message, down to the dugout to do something. But no, I really think this is all being done pregame. I think they go through all these different scenarios that could happen in the game. And if this, then we're going to do that. And if it's this, then we're going to do that. And then you hope that those right situations come up, and then you can use the guys the way you want to. I think it's more about that than anything happening on the fly. I don't want to discredit the job that Blake Butera is doing. Yes, there is influence from the front office, but I think that's all happening prior to the game and presenting them with different scenarios and saying, well, if we get into this spot, here's the best matchup for that, and et cetera, et cetera. And then when the time comes, it's kind of up to Butera and his coaching staff, who's all following this along the way, the pitching coach, the bench coach, and everybody else, and then they're making that call in real time. I'd be very surprised if the front office is actually communicating during the game about things they want them to do.
It'd be interesting to know, because there's also something like, okay, the front office is tracking, say, how like the starting pitcher's spin rate is doing. And the front office is noticing that the starter's spin rate is declining. And so before he starts getting hammered, you want to communicate that to Butera in game so that he gets the starting pitcher out before the guy starts struggling, that kind of a thing. I feel like there's a lot of unknown when it comes to these advanced front offices and how they are communicating to the manager and coaching staff, how often things are being communicated to the manager and coaching staff. It would be fascinating to sit in on one of these pregame meetings between Nats baseball ops and Blake Butera and see how they map out the strategy for a specific game. I'm assuming the conversations aren't necessarily Taboni and Butera, but like members of Taboni's staff with Butera, that kind of thing. But what's being said, how much input does Butera have versus how much is it Nats baseball ops sort of telling Butera the right way to go? I mean, again, there's a lot here we don't know, but I think it's so interesting. And, I think it's the kind of thing that we want to try to learn, because this is how the Nats are doing business now.
I think it's pretty collaborative from what I've gathered so far. Yes, front office is giving information, but that doesn't mean the coaching staff has to do exactly what they're being told. They're saying, well, okay, yeah, I see that, but I actually kind of feel like this might be a good way to go about it. And they have a discussion and figure things out. And, I also don't want to make it seem like this is entirely managing by numbers, because it's not. And there was a good example of it on opening day with Cade Cavalli. I think we talked a little bit about when he gave him the hook. It was 75 pitches and it was still only the fourth inning. And what prompted Butera to make that move, I think there were two main factors. One, they are getting information in the dugout, and they were seeing in particular that his velocity was coming down inning by inning. So there's that. But even more than that, and Blake said this himself, there was a feel element to it. Watching him pitch, it wasn't just about the number of pitches. It was about the stress that he was under. There were a lot of high-stress pitches out of those 75. And he felt like for game one of the season, for a guy who, with all his injury history and doesn't really have a track record yet of grinding out long starts in the big leagues, he could feel in the moment, okay, I think that's enough for him. I don't want to push him any further. So this is not completely computerized. There is human emotion involved in all this. And personally, I was glad to hear that from him, because, we don't really know how these guys are operating. Yes, they have a lot of information. Yes, they're using the data, the technology, and all that. But ultimately, these are decisions being made by human beings, and there are other factors, intangible factors, that they're considering when they make their in-game decisions.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Now the pitch on the way, and the breaking ball swung on there. Chop back to Beeter, first base side, jogging toward first. The flip to Luis Garcia Jr. for the out at first. And a Curly W's in the books here at Wrigley Field in Chicago. Final score, the Nationals 6, the Cubs 3.
Well, next up for the Nats is a series at another powerhouse or expected powerhouse or perceived powerhouse, a 3-game series at the Philadelphia Phillies. Game 1, Monday evening at 6:40. Foster Griffin will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 2, Tuesday evening at 6:40. The Nats starting pitcher is to be announced. Game 3, Wednesday afternoon at 1:05. Cade Cavalli will be the Nats starting pitcher. So the Game 2 on Tuesday evening sets up to be Zach Littell. The Nats, though, are not announcing Zach Littell, at least not yet. Is he still trying to get ready, or is there something else going on here?
So I think, as we've talked about with him, he only got to make 3 spring starts, and the last one was in West Palm Beach in a minor league game. He really hasn't built up the way that ideally you would want for a big league starting pitcher. Now, he says he feels good. He says he's ready to go, and perhaps it will be him, and they're just waiting to make sure that he's good to go. My own theory, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just kind of speculating here, maybe one reason that it's listed as TBA. If they don't think that Littell is going to be good for more than 3-4 innings because he just hasn't built up his arm yet, the Phillies lineup is loaded with left-handed hitters at the top, Schwarber and Harper being the chief among them. Littell is a right-handed pitcher. If you don't think he's going to get you through 5 innings to begin with, why not start a reliever? Start a PJ Poulin as the opener, just to face those lefties in the first inning, maybe go into the second inning a little bit as well. And then you come in with Littell to get you through the second, third, fourth, and maybe 5th inning before then you go back to your normal strategy by the time you get to the 6th. Again, I have no hard, concrete information on this. That's pure speculation on my part, but I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that PJ Poulin will be the opener for Game 2 of that series with Zach Littell coming in behind him at some point.
You know you are playing with my emotions when you say stuff like that. And you know that you are prodding me and getting me all worked up because you know how much I couldn't stand the Nats never trying the opener strategy during all these years of the rebuild. Man, if they do that, that is just another wonderful thing about the early portion of this Nats season. If they're actually embracing a strategy that so many other teams across MLB have been embracing, be still my heart an opener in what would be, Game 5 of the regular season.
Again, no promises that it's going to happen, but the fact that they're listing it as TBA, the fact that Littell is not 100% all the way there ready yet, and the fact of who they're facing in the Phillies, I think there's a lot of logic behind it. We'll see if I'm right about that. They have other lefties. I don't think they'd start Cionel Perez because he is kind of the big late inning guy. If you got to face Schwarber and Harper late in the game, he's the guy you want. The other lefty on the roster right now is Ken Waldchuk, who did not look good at all on Saturday. Now, the X factor of all this is they could make another move before then. We've already seen roster shuffling. They sent down Chaparro after Sunday's game, which none of us saw coming. So they could have something completely different up their sleeves and calling somebody up from AAA maybe to start that game, or maybe it's just a true bullpen game. I don't know that any of that right now, but I think there's logic in the idea of using an opener for Littell, and based on who they have at the moment, Poulin would seem like the one that made the most sense to be that opener.
Well, and what you're saying makes sense, too, from this standpoint. So normally when a team announces its probable starting pitchers for the upcoming series, if a game is TBA, it's for one of two reasons. Either a pitcher is about to come off an injured list or is expected to be ready but isn't officially ready, or you're going to use the opener strategy and you're just not sure which reliever you're going to be starting. So what you're saying makes total sense. By the way, I was doing some prep work for this show on Saturday and I didn't realize this. So Jake Irvin, like we said, led the majors in homers allowed last regular season, 38. Number 2 I didn't realize this till Saturday, was Zach Littell, 36. Littell has had a bit of a home run problem, even though he overall had a pretty good season, did give up a lot of home runs last season.
And I think Miles Michaelis was in the top 10 as well for most given up. That doesn't sound great when 3 of your 5 are in the top 10 from the last year. They also, I'm pretty sure, the Nationals, each of the last 4 seasons have had the major league leader in home runs allowed, and it's been 4 different pitchers doing that. Patrick Corbin, Josiah Gray, Trevor Williams, and Jake Irvin. Boy, I hope they end that streak this year. That would be very nice.
It would be very nice, absolutely. But it is very nice to have the Nats at 2-1 winning this series at the Chicago Cubs. You tell us what you think. You can hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website you can check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Miller, first base side of the rubber, will sling it home from the side of the pitch. Swung on and lined to the left, a base hit. Another hit for Joey Wiemer. Unbelievable. He has reached base now 4 times today after doing the same thing on opening day. 8 plate appearances. He's gotten on base every time. That's his 3rd hit of the day.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.